Oh, no, no, you...
Hello, horror fans. It's our favorite time of year. We're deep into October, and that means horror movie marathon. This year, Hulu has decided to join us on this marathon with their new original dark horror slasher movie called Car, which has a very deranged slasher, Sentient Pumpkin. It might sound easy to squash, but this serial killer somehow proved far more difficult to defeat than expect. Director Justin Harding decided to set this whole story on Halloween Day 1990 at Cedar Creek Pioneer Village in Maine. So what actually went down in this living museum of a town? Did the pumpkin get to killing ever? Join us as we explore Car. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Vengeance of the Pumpkin. A year prior, there had been a terrible chemical spill that took place near the town of Cedar Creek. The disaster was immense, and a lot of people's lives were destroyed because of it. However, keep spirits up, the general manager and the head of the grounds, Bill and Kevin respectively, decided to celebrate Halloween with a pumpkin fest. A reporter from the local news station showed up at the events, and although Bill assumed that he would be covering the pumpkin fest, the reporter kept prodding about the disaster that struck Cedar Creek a year ago. The town of Cedar Creek has a theater group led by our main character, Kira. She's the director of this group, and her group members include Shane, Cody, Maddie, and Barbara. Her parents passed away due to the chemical spill, and since then, she's been the one in charge of Trevor, her younger brother. She and Kira are dating, and they're planning on using the news coverage to get the attention they deserve and go to Juilliard. However, during this interview, we learn that Cody has already got an offer, going to move away 3 weeks later. Kira immediately gets upset as she doesn't know how she would manage Trevor without Cody's help and tell Trevor about the news. Instead, she gives him her pumpkin and lets him join the pumpkin carving contest, whole $50 as a cash prize. Clint, the son of Earl Craven, who mostly sells corn, found a big, almost diseased-looking pumpkin growing in the fields behind his barn. He knew that his friend was going to join in on the pumpkin carving contest. This pumpkin would certainly get him the prize money. He chopped off the stem and brought the large vegetable to the pumpkin fest. All the carvers take their position and immediately get to business. While the reporter covered the news of the pumpkin carving, he was wondering what was wrong with these and how boring the whole event was. For him, things almost immediately get rather interesting. Wesley, Clint's friend, was stoned to find his knife at first. By the time he found his knife, the diseased pumpkin started growing tendrils and was ready to attack him. Sure enough, the tendrils wrapped around Clint's wrists and forcibly sliced his neck open. To the horror of the spectators, Pumpkin went after most of the contestants, killing them in gruesome ways. He decapitates the reporter, gets his hands on a knife, fend himself against the monstrous entity. Kira, Cody, Trevor, Shane, Maddie, and Barbara were stuck in a shed with Arthur, an old man. They kept planning on how they could escape and assumed they were safe in the barn. However, Pumpkin managed to get to Arthur in no time. After a lot of shenanigans, teens managed to get into Clint's truck and started making a hasty escape. By this time, Barbara had gotten her hands on the camera of the reporter. Viewing the footage, realized that the pumpkin was specifically after the carvers and others who were part of the competition. Maddie, Trevor, Kevin, and Shane were the contestants, whereas Bill organized. They were definitely on this pumpkin's radar. We as the audience know that since Clint was the one who took it from the field, too was also on its radar. The corn wagon that Clint took isn't the best truck to use for a hasty escape. It breaks down if it goes over 30 for a long time. He was taking a nap at the back of the wagon after getting high. He was found there by the group when they quickly jump in the truck and leave with it. Refused to let Cody drive the wagon, and Barbara tried to threaten Clint into giving up the driver's seat to Cody. Right then, Killer Pumpkin lands on the ceiling of the wagon, scaring Clint. His eyes off the road, and the wagon crashes into a tree. Barbara dies in the crash, accidentally stabbing herself in the heart with the knife. Clint is thrown out the windshield, and the rest are knocked out cold. When Kira comes to, she thought Trevor died, blood on his clothes. Turns out it was fake blood and that Trevor was actually okay. Cody, Kira, and Trevor could make their next move, the sounds of the pumpkin lurking outside, so quickly decide to play possum. Sure enough, the pumpkin visitive tendrils enter the wagon, check out all the corpses, pokes and slaps Trevor just to make sure the boy is truly dead. This inspection gets cut short when Clint shows up out of nowhere. Before our characters can warn him of his impending doom, Pumpkin wraps its tendrils around his legs and drags him away. Kira notices a barn far away from the accident site and decides to get help from there. Luckily, it's Earl's barn. Kira tries to tell Earl about what happened, but Earl understandably thinks that Clint is playing a prank on him. He starts scolding Clint, who is seen walking towards the barn. Comes close enough, Earl and Kira realize that the pumpkin is using Clint's headless corpse as a puppet. Using Clint's corpse and the tendrils, the pumpkin manages to force Earl into blowing his brains. Kira, having no other choice, runs away again, reach Trevor and Cody before the pumpkin does. It's the boys halfway and they start running for the hill. Eventually, they reach the spot where Clint originally found the pumpkin, and what do you know, the pumpkin has many babies. The pumpkin catches up to them and immediately tries to choke out Trevor. Kira's quick thinking comes in clutch. She takes one of the baby pumpkins hostage and threatens to stab it if the pumpkin doesn't let Trevor go. Killer Pumpkin relents and the kids run into the barn again, but this time with the baby pumpkin. They use the baby pumpkin to lure the killer pumpkin into the blades of a crusher tractor. Next morning, as the three catch their breath, Maddie, she has miraculously survived her encounter with the killer pumpkin. With her, they line up the baby pumpkin using the crusher tractor. Kira kills all of them for good. You would think that that's where the story ends. Quite. The last scene before the credits roll, we see Clint's severed head. Pumpkin carved him up like the people carve pumpkin, and from gouged eye sockets, we see the tendril pumpkin poking through. There's no denying that this movie is campy, much like Thanksgiving. However, we got to admit, the killer pumpkin is surprisingly tough. So let's take a look at the anatomy of this gory gourd and try to understand why it took our main characters so long to defeat it.
Oh, no, I shouldn't have told you that.
The Killer Pumpkin, Anatomy Explore. With its diseased look, sunken eye sockets, and thick tendrils, this pumpkin is effectively nightmare fuel. As it turns out, the way it was created is just as nightmarish. So at the beginning of the film, we see the local reporter constantly poking around about the chemical village's pumpkin festival. As the movie goes on, we learn that this chemical spill occurred when a train from the company Clyonics got derailed. The chemicals inside the train spilt over, and contamination was extremely toxic, affected the land and the animals, killed many people. Clint found the pumpkin while he was listening to music and getting high. He tripped over one of its tendrils and ended up coming face to face with this huge dark-colored pumpkin with eye sockets and grass-like pupae. The field where he found the pumpkin seemed pretty far away from the town as a whole. The local reporter did say that the spill happened across town. To the dots together by now, of course, it was the known chemical train was carrying that created the mutation in the pumpkin. Not only did it give the pumpkin such a scary face, it also turned its sentient mother pumpkin to go on a killing carve. Don't confirm whether the chemical had affected other fruits and vegetables after the spill. It seems likely that Cedar Creek to have another attack from a sentient vegetable. One of the craziest things about this pumpkin killer has to be how it uses its tendrils. The tendrils resemble tentacles, uses them, and they're more like sensory, motor, and locomotion organs. Watching the pumpkin scampering around on the ground on its tendrils is a surprisingly scary visual. And these tendrils can literally stab through a person like they're made of jelly. They're like mini knives that are just waving around in the air, waiting for the next target. Most memorable kill has to be when the pumpkin not only stabbed Bill, but pushed his heart out of his chest cavity and held it in midair outside his body or dropping it to the floor. That was genuinely horrifying. On top of that, the blossom on top of the pumpkin acts like a mouthpiece, allowing the pumpkin to talk or call out to its babe. I don't know about you, but the scene where the blossom opens up really reminded me of the monsters we see in A Quiet Place, especially when they open their mouth. Other than being extremely scary, this pumpkin also happens to be way too strong. The mother pumpkin's tendrils are almost invincible. On top of that, only time we see the mother pumpkin take some damage when it got into an accident with the main group in Clint's corn wagon. However, despite having half her head caved in, the mother pumpkin was moving just as fast, its reflexes stayed just as sharp. We also haven't mentioned how cleverly the filmmakers portrayed the emotions of the pumpkin. I mean, it is a pumpkin. We weren't expecting to see fully understandable expressions or anything, but the slight gestures, the hesitation in coiling the tendrils around Trevor's neck, eventually relenting just to save its baby, was a prime example of expert filmmaking. We could understand the emotions the mother pumpkin was feeling even without seeing its face. Also, it was funny when it would just menacingly peek around the corner as our main characters were running away. Just this menacing pumpkin staring daggers at the back of their heads. I think the movie became 100% more entertaining the moment the pumpkin came into the picture. We often found ourselves waiting for the pumpkin shenanigans. The movie would focus more on the characters. As is often the case with slasher flicks, the pumpkin was the star of the show and it absolutely won my heart. The whole time the mother pumpkin was on the path of vengeance. She saw so many other pumpkins getting carved up and people laughing as they took out the seeds and whatnot. Imagine if you saw someone carving up another human and laughing maniacally while they pulled out their intestine. Wouldn't you think that person was sick and start attacking them out of self-defense? The mother pumpkin was doing just that. I mean, yes, in the context of the story, she is the main killer, but if we look at the movie from its perspective, it was just trying to save its species and its babies from monsters by displaying their carved up corpses. Can you really blame the mother pumpkin for behaving the way that she did? Think about it. Isn't she kind of the hero? Marvelous verdict! Campy horror movies are an absolute staple of Halloween movie marathons. This year, we recommend indulging in some Hulu-ween with this amazing movie. Gather up your friends, get some popcorn, and watch this film for a fun time. The gore is pretty tasteful, and the jokes will land and make you chuckle. Just make sure there aren't any pumpkins lying around when you watch it. You wouldn't want a killer pumpkin coming after you. Unfortunately, that's all we got for you this time. This is Wizard Wheezy signing off for now, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.